Welcome back to another NBA season and another episode of Give and Go, SI.com's critically acclaimed web series where we examine three of the bigger NBA storylines every single week. Joining me is a man who is going to be driving the Anthony Davis for MVP bus all season long. Check out SI's NBA preview issue for more. SI.com's Rob Mahoney. Welcome back, Rob.
Thanks for having me, Chris. All aboard the MVP train. Let's do it.
All right, topic number one. I think we can all agree that Cleveland is the team to beat in at least the Eastern Conference. The Cavs get everyone back and will add Mo Williams and a healthy Anderson Varejao, who I kind of forgot about, to an incredibly talented starting lineup. My question to you, Rob, is this. Is there anyone that can realistically compete with them in their conference?
I'm not quite sold on it. You know, all the teams have pretty significant warts, but of the teams, I think Chicago is probably the one to pick, just because they have such incredible depth, especially on that front line, that they have so many different options. And there are some issues of fit. There's some questions, especially in the starting lineup, if you're going to put Nikola Mirotic and Pau Gasol out there in terms of how that group is going to defend. But I think they also have the pieces to make a midseason trade if that's what they want to do. And they have a lot of flexibility in terms of building a lot of different kinds of lineups and doing a lot of things within their new offense under Fred Hoiberg. I like what they have. I don't like him enough to pick them over the Cavs, but I think they're a pretty compelling choice.
I mean, okay, but you know there's a difference between paper Chicago and real Chicago. I mean, paper Chicago has Derrick Rose on it and a healthy Joakim Noah. Real Chicago may not have either at varying points during this season. I'm with you to some degree with the Bulls if they stay healthy, but until they do that, I'm not buying in all the way. Two teams I look at as possibilities. Toronto, I'm kind of riding the Raptors bandwagon early on. Kyle Lowry looks great. They've been emphasizing defense in the preseason. Maybe that defense goes back to being a top 10 one instead of a bottom third one this year. I like Toronto. And Miami, their starting lineup is great. If they can get anything from that second unit, and I'm looking at you, Gerald Green, if they can get anything from that second group, I think the Heat could be a real challenge to Cleveland in the playoffs.
No, I agree. I mean, Toronto, the questions for me are mostly defensively, especially when you have Jonas Valanciunas and potentially Luis Scola or Patrick Patterson if he ultimately wins the starting spot there. That's just not a front court I like to depend on in terms of when you're projecting big-time defensive improvement. I don't know. I like Chicago. The injury concerns are real. They also apply to Miami, too. I like the options that the Bulls have ultimately in terms of navigating the course of the season, in terms of figuring things out on the fly. They have a lot to prove for sure, but I think I'm still picking them.
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately it's wishful thinking. If Cleveland's healthy going into the postseason, there is no way anyone's going to touch them. San Antonio, topic number two here. San Antonio is accustomed to winning championships, but they are not used to winning this, the offseason. The Spurs, famous for rarely landing high-profile free agents, they reeled in the biggest free agent prize in LaMarcus Aldridge, who pushes that Tim Duncan-led title window open for at least one more year. Rob, Aldridge is an elite player, but he's also one accustomed to having the ball in his hands a lot. How do you see him fitting in with San Antonio?
Yeah, I think they're going to be really good in the long run. But early in the season, I'm expecting a little bit of a slow start just in terms of acclimating all the pieces there. And it's not just Aldridge learning the way the Spurs play and learning the way the Spurs will play around him, but all of his teammates, too, really getting used to him and feeling out his game. I'm also interested to see whether the small concessions that went into getting Aldridge end up hurting them at all. Losing a guy like Thiago Splitter, who's a good pick-and-roll defender, a good rebounder, and losing a guard like Corey Joseph, who was really instrumental in those games where Tony Parker was either injured or not playing so well. Missing those guys could hurt, and they're not roles that the Spurs can easily fill, even with the other additions they made this summer. They're going to be a really good team. They're going to be among one of the contenders in the West, but I'm curious to see how they kind of figure things out and retool over the course of the year.
Yeah, you can throw Marco Bellinelli into that mix as well as far as the guys that they lost in last offseason. Look, I'm with you. I don't think this is going to be the 07-08 Celtics where a superstar is added to a team and they win 22 of their first 25 or whatever. Aldridge, even though the Spurs are used to playing two big bigs, for lack of a better phrase, with Thiago Splitter, their best offensive lineup always came when Boris Diaw was on the floor. And now you're expecting Aldridge to usurp some of those minutes. And Aldridge is not a three-point shooter, at least not a consistent one yet. He's not a guy that takes you off the dribble. He is a mid-range jump shooter who thrives in the low post and is used to getting fed early and often down there. Now, when I talked to Greg Popovich a couple of weeks ago, he said they're going to go out of their way to make sure that Aldridge gets his touches in that low post. But it's going to be some concessions back and forth for the first month or so of the season, I think, as these two sides that aren't used to playing in that style kind of figure each other out.
Yeah, they're going to have to figure out how to play a different way from what they're used to and from what Aldridge is used to. Ultimately, you hope that if you're the Spurs, by the time the playoffs come around, not only do you have the ability to work through Aldridge or resort to more of a ball movement-oriented style like the Spurs have always employed over the last couple of years, but you have that flexibility of going big and small. You have Aldridge, just a guy who could potentially punish the Draymond Green types, the kind of smaller fours that could potentially be guarding him over the course of a playoff series. They're going to have a lot of flexibility within their lineups and their strategies, and I think that's the sweet spot they want to put themselves in.
Yeah, I think the one other positive for San Antonio is they get a fully healthy Patty Mills this season, and Patty's going to have to take a lot of pressure off Tony Parker, who looked like he was showing some signs of aging towards the end of last season. All right, topic number 3. We are all expecting a free-for-all among the top 4 or 5 teams in the Western Conference, but the West is getting deeper at the bottom. Rob, give me a team in the West that you think can surprise one of the top 3 teams in the first round of the playoffs.
I know this is a shocker, but I'm going with the Pelicans. Not only do they have that astronomical kind of league-shaping talent in Anthony Davis, a guy who is a better defender than almost any superstar in the league, who's incredibly efficient, who's become a better shot creator over the last year in particular. But I think they have the momentum and the steam to really come on strong later in the year and round into something pretty interesting. Drew Holiday is going to start the year out on a minutes limit. Tyreek Evans is set to miss the beginning of the season after his knee surgery. They're missing Omer Asik, Quincy Pondexter, Alexia Jinsa. There are a lot of injuries early that could make things look pretty bad pretty quickly. But when you put all those bodies back, I think they have both a system that's going to serve the role players in this group well. Guys like Ryan Anderson and Eric Gordon are going to really thrive playing up tempo, even players like Norris Cole. And then you also have a projected defensive improvement just by using guys in a very different way from what they're used to. They've simplified the defensive coverage a lot in New Orleans, and they're really gunning hard for a top 10 finish in defensive efficiency. I don't know if they can quite get there, but anything over, they were 23rd last season. If they can even show marginal improvement there and replicate the really efficient offense they had at a faster pace, they're going to be a really tough team to contend with.
Yeah, I'm with you on the Pelicans. I mean, Anthony Davis, once he starts consistently knocking down threes, he's literally going to be impossible to guard on a consistent basis. I'm going to go, though, with Memphis, just because I got to believe that this bully ball system is good enough to win a first-round series against somebody. And like everybody else, I've had the same concerns with Memphis the last couple of years. That is perimeter shooting. They didn't do much, if anything, to upgrade that area in the offseason. They're still hoping that guys like Courtney Lee and Vince Carter and Jeff Green provide consistency. But if any one of those 3 guys steps up, or if they're able to go out and make a trade, which I think they might be willing to do in a year that I think is pretty important for this group if they want to keep it together, I'm going to take the Grizzlies, because when they get to the postseason, they've got a point guard who's been called underrated so many times, he's probably overrated at this point, and they've got 2 of the best bigs in the NBA, in Gasol and Randolph, that can win a series for you just because of how much they punish you. So I'm kind of crossing my fingers here, Rob, and thinking that maybe Memphis either finds shooting on its roster, or maybe they go out and get shooting in a midseason trade.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy that we even have to create this tier system in the West where the Grizzlies, in any other context, are a contending team, just like the Rockets, and yet those two may be a cut below that top 4 group just because the conference is so deep. But I'm right there with you. The Grizzlies are a tremendous team with a little bit better health over last year's playoff run. They may have gone even further, especially with Mike Conley and Tony Allen being a little dinged up. They still need to figure out a way to keep Tony Allen on the floor. And some of that has to do with finding the shooting that you're talking about, finding ways to work around the fact that defenses can cheat off of him. If they can ever figure that out, I mean, they're definitely a team that no one wants to face in the postseason.
Yeah, I tell you what, I think there's going to be a fight to get that #1 overall seed in the West, because a first-round series against Utah or Phoenix is a lot different than a first-round series against Memphis or New Orleans. So I don't think they'll be taking any games off towards the end of the season if avoidable. All right, Rob, appreciate the time, and we will see you back on here very soon.